history never stands still. Upon the solid foundation of the indigenous civilization that we explored in the last episode, a new wind began to blow from the west. But this was no ordinary wind. It was a tempest of ideas, a revolution of faith, carrying with it powerful gods and philosophies that could change an entire worldview. It came from India. This was not an invasion of territory. It was a revolution of the mind. So the question is, how did these ideas conquer a vast region without a single war? Who were the missionaries, merchants, and mystics who carried this cultural fire? And from the miraculous fusion of native culture and Indian civilization, what glorious empires were born from the cradle of history? Welcome back to Episode 2, The Dawn of Kingdoms. Part 1, The Indianization Revolution, a miraculous wave of civilization. The term Indianization or Hinduization is often used to describe this process. But from the outset, we must understand, this was not a colonization. There were no expeditionary forces from India coming to conquer and impose their culture. Historical evidence suggests the opposite. So, how did this process occur? Scholars have proposed several fascinating theories. The first theory suggests that the primary role belonged to the Brahmins, the highest class of priests and scholars in India. Ambitious Southeast Asian rulers, having heard of the grandeur of Indian dynasties, actively invited these Brahmin scholars to their courts. The Brahmins brought with them knowledge of Sanskrit, legal codes, and most importantly, the rituals to consecrate a king as a living god, a god-king, which helped local rulers consolidate their absolute power. The second theory places more emphasis on the role of monastic and academic centers. Southeast Asian monks and scholars actively sought out major Buddhist centers in India, such as Nalanda, to study. Upon their return, they brought not only religious knowledge but also art, architecture, and literature, which they then interpreted in their own ways. The third theory focuses on economic motivations. In the early centuries AD, the demand for gold and Eastern products grew. When land routes were disrupted, Indian merchants had to seek new sources in the East, in the lands that legends called Land of Gold, Suvarnabhumi, which was Southeast Asia. Flourishing trade routes led to the establishment of Indian trading settlements in Southeast Asian seaports. From these centers, Indian culture gradually spread into the native societies. Regardless of the theory, the core commonality remains. This was a process of cultural reception that was active and voluntary on the part of the ruling elites of Southeast Asia. They saw in Indian civilization effective tools to enhance their prestige, legitimize their power, and build a more complex and organized state. They imported the necessary elements and skillfully combined them with indigenous beliefs and traditions to create a completely new, unique, and brilliant model of civilization. So now we have a clearer understanding of how the wave of Indian civilization spread to Southeast Asia. But what were the concrete results of this process? In our next section, we will turn to the story of the first and most magnificent empire recorded in history, the Kingdom of Funan. Part 2, The Funan Empire, Mystery of the First Maritime Kingdom. The first and most glorious result of the Indianization process was the emergence of the first organized states. And the greatest kingdom, recorded earliest in ancient texts, was the Empire of Funan. What we know about Funan comes mainly from the records of Chinese missions sent there in the 3rd century. In their eyes, Funan was a powerful and wealthy kingdom with a developed culture. The legend of the founding of Funan, recorded by the Chinese envoys, is a highly symbolic tale. It tells of an Indian Brahmin named Kaundinya who sailed eastward under divine guidance. His boat brought him to the coast of Funan. The queen of this land, named Soma, ordered an attack. Kaundinya drew his divine bow and shot an arrow that pierced the queen's boat. Soma was terrified and submitted. Kaundinya then married Soma and established the first dynasty. This story carries a profound meaning about the fusion of a foreign element, bringing new knowledge, Kaundinya, with an indigenous, powerful, and matriarchal element, Queen Soma. Their marriage is the very symbol of the birth of a new civilization. Under the rule of kings like Fan Shiman in the 3rd century, Funan became a true maritime empire, thalassocracy. They built a powerful fleet, conquered neighboring petty states, and controlled all the vital maritime trade routes connecting China, India, and even Rome. The heart of this empire was the port city of Oceo, located in the Mekong Delta region of present-day Vietnam. Archaeological excavations at Oceo have astonished the world. Countless artifacts from all over the globe have been found. Gold medals of Roman emperors, Han Dynasty bronze mirrors, jewelry from Persia and India. This proves that Oceo was once a bustling international superport. Funan society had houses built on stilts to avoid floods, and their livelihoods were based on agriculture and trade. They developed a complex canal system used for both drainage and transportation. At the same time as Funan, in what is now central Vietnam, the kingdom of Lin-yi, the precursor to Kampa, also rose and was often in conflict with Funan. The rise and dominance of Funan showed the incredible power that resulted from combining indigenous culture with Indian models of organization. Though Funan would eventually fall, its legacy, a profoundly Indianized society, became the foundation for the civilizations that followed. And its most important legacy was the religious and philosophical systems it adopted. In our final section, we will explore how Hinduism and Buddhism shaped the soul of Southeast Asia. Part 3. The Religious Legacy: How Hinduism and Buddhism Shaped Southeast Asia. From the political and social foundations of the Funan Empire, spiritual seeds from India took root and blossomed. In this final part of our exploration of proto-historic Southeast Asia, we will explore two great religions, Hinduism and Buddhism, and see how they shaped the worldview of the region. Along with the model of statehood and writing systems, the Indians brought their most precious gift: great religious and philosophical systems. Hinduism and Buddhism quickly took root, but they were interpreted and practiced by the local people in their own unique ways. Hinduism, though a complex polytheistic religion, its worship in Southeast Asia often focused on the three supreme deities, the Trimurti, especially Shiva and Vishnu. Shiva, the most widely worshipped. He is both the destroyer and the creator, symbolizing the eternal change of the universe. His symbol is the linga, a stone pillar representing creative energy, which was seen by the kings of Funan and Kampa as a symbol of their own power. Vishnu, the preserver, who maintains order and justice. He has many incarnations, avatars, who descend to earth to help humanity, most famously Rama in the Ramayana and Krishna in the Mahabharata. These heroic tales became an endless source of inspiration for Southeast Asian art. Profound philosophical concepts such as dharma, duty, righteousness, and karma, the law of cause and effect, were also adopted, shaping the ethical standards in society. Buddhism also entered the region very early. Core teachings. Buddhism teaches the Four Noble Truths about suffering and the Eightfold Path to achieve liberation. The ultimate goal is to reach nirvana, a state of absolute peace, ending the cycle of rebirth. Two major schools, Theravada Buddhism, which emphasizes individual effort for liberation, later became the main religion in mainland Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, Mahayana Buddhism, with its compassionate figures of bodhisattvas who vow to remain in the world to save all beings, flourished in the island kingdoms like Srivijaya. The arrival of these two religions did not erase the indigenous animistic beliefs and ancestor worship. Instead, they coexisted and blended. Hindu gods, or Buddhas and bodhisattvas, were often identified with local mountain spirits, river deities, or legendary founding heroes, creating an incredibly diverse and distinctive religious landscape. Thus, the second chapter of Southeast Asian history has painted a magnificent picture of a cultural revolution. From the solid indigenous foundation we explored in the first episode, the wave of Indian civilization arrived, bringing with it new elements, a writing system, a model of state organization, and religions of deep philosophy. But this was not an imposition. It was a dialogue, a wonderful fusion. It was the combination of the internal vitality of indigenous culture and the profundity of Indian civilization that created the first glorious era of Southeast Asian history, the era of the proto-historic kingdoms like Funan and Lin-yi. This is the very foundation upon which even greater empires and even more magnificent architectural works would be built. In our next series, we will delve into the history of those mighty empires, the masters of maritime trade who ruled vast expanses of the sea.